Hey guys, my name's Adam Oriola. I'm in Rivers right now. Most of the other kids you'll see around here are either juniors or from the previous cohorts are either done with their Rivers experience or about to be done. We have about 4 days left in our cohort, but all I can say is Rivers has been one of the most phenomenal experiences of my life. I know it's not done yet. I know next week when I go to school in the next 4 days, I'm gonna learn something amazing, something I never could have thought of. So I can't say my experience is done yet, but thus far it's been a wonderful experience. I've gotten much more from Rivers than I can easily say I've gotten much more from Rivers than I did from the previous 3 years of high school combined. I'm not lying when I say that. Maybe there's a lot of ways you can take that, but what Rivers, for one of the best things that Rivers taught me is, as Sophie got up here and said right in the beginning of her speech, when you think you have more to offer than someone else, you don't. If you think you have less to offer than someone else, you don't. And as someone who's always been a big extrovert, someone who likes to get up and give big speeches like this, someone who likes to lecture people about history and stuff like that, that came as a big deal to me. I mean, for me to have to tone things down and think, I really don't have any more to offer than anyone else. It took a lot for me. And I have to say that it's been one of the most valuable things that anyone ever told me. The things I've learned from my peers, the 50 or so other kids that I've done Rivers with, has been so amazing. I mean, when you really stop to think about the fact that every single person has incredible things to offer in their lives, incredible things to say, and just needs a little bit of a push to get out there and say them, it really teaches you just how awesome and spectacular the things Mr. Goodwin has done, Mr. Goldberg, Mr. Fuller, and the whole Rivers staff are doing for us every day as we get up there. Without further ado, I'm up here to introduce Mr. Gothier, who's going to be one of the 3 founders of the Rivers Institute when Rivers goes off to become its own school next year. And they gave me a little bio here to read about Mr. Gothier. I know Mr. Gothier very well, and that's really not his style. He's a man of countless accomplishments. I could get up here and talk for hours about the research he's done, with the classes he's taught, things he's learned, the things he's said. But I'm going to talk about Mr. Gothier as the Mr. Gothier I know him as. And so, when I first joined Mr. Gothier's sociology class earlier this year, one of the first things he told me was that sociology, one of the biggest principles of sociology, is learning this thing called the sociological imagination. And what that means is that you approach everyday life with a completely new perspective, completely different than anyone who's never studied sociology before. And he said, maybe that's a good thing, maybe that's a bad thing, because when you approach life as a sociologist, when you see life the way Mr. Gothier does, sometimes you just can't let things go that most of us can, and sometimes that makes you a little bit of a difficult dinner guest, a little bit more on the snobby, obnoxious side in certain areas. But it also makes you someone who can add more perspective on the little things we do in life, the little things that we often miss, and the things that we often don't pay a lot of attention to than anyone else can who hasn't studied sociology. So what Mr. Gothier taught me is that when you see someone, for example, one of Mr. Gothier's biggest things is when we use the word like. People in my generation have a tendency to say, I like this, it's kind of like, this guy was like, we learned like this. There's actually a lot more to that than we like to think. Mr. Gothier really taught us to understand how using the word like and using words that separate ourselves from speaking in direct statements really can tell a lot about us as a generation and what our generation has to say and what our generation sees ourselves as. We're much less likely than previous generations to really own statements, to really get up and say, not only do I kind of like this, I think this is kind of like, kind of good. We don't have the authority in our own. We don't give ourselves the authority and the self-respect to get up there and say, I love that band, or I really love this program, or I really love that class, because too often we're told that we're wrong, and too often in academics we're told that most of the time when we get up and say something, that it needs to be seen objectively and it needs to be picked apart and everything that's wrong about it needs to be said before we really think about what's right about it. And that really convinces us to not own our statements, to really not own the things that we say. And Mr. Gauthier tries really hard in his class, and even in personal conversation, this is what kind of makes sociologists a little tougher about dinner guests, to really pick that apart. He'll stop you mid-statement and he'll say, "Why did you say that? Why didn't you own that statement?" And it really makes you think. It really makes you think about what it means to, what the little things we do in life mean, and what it says about our society as a whole. And so beyond this, Mr. Gauthier, he teaches at Carlisle High School. The sociology class he teaches is by far, Mr. Hobitzel said this to me before I did it, and I can say this truthfully now, by far the most amazing sociology program you'll find at the high school level anywhere in this country. Beyond this, he's taught at the University of Michigan. He holds a PhD from there, and has done all sorts of research. He brings this into the lessons every day that I had when I was one of his students. And he's one of the most phenomenal and caring teachers I've ever met. He has more to teach you about people and the little things you can do in life than anyone I've ever encountered. And that's going to make him a phenomenal person for the Rivers Institute, and a phenomenal friend to any of you who want to go have a little chat with him. Invite him to your dinner parties, because he'll teach you a lot more than your average guest. Maybe it'll be unpleasant, but it'll be fantastic.
I'm not speaking yet, but I gotta say that's a lot to live up to. So thank you all for being here. A real pleasure to see you all.